Good afternoon, everybody. Once again, welcome to part 24 in the Inclusive Network Town Hall series. My name is Jules Epstein-Hebert, the Director of Membership here at Inclusive, and I'm very, very excited for today's agenda, for today's discussion. So let's get right into it. We're going to start with a brief advocacy update just for folks applying to ESIP, some important developments. Then our colleague, Terry Ratigan, our senior consultant, will be giving an overview of the CDFI minority lending program before our very own Monica Copeland leads a panel discussion providing a perspective from minority CDFIs on the process and the work of community development finance, featuring Sue Cuevas, CEO of Nueva Esperanza Community Credit Union, Carla Decker, CEO of DC FCU, and Sheilah Montgomery, CEO at Florida A&M University FCU. Before we get into questions, just a reminder to be sure to check in. Inclusive is always updating resources and information and opportunities for our network, so I encourage you to check the frequently updated website on a regular basis. Also, a reminder that the next town hall session will be Tuesday, December 14th at 1:15 p.m. Eastern Time. If you need to register, feel free to use this link. I'll be sharing the slides with everybody. And I forgot to say at the beginning of this session, this is being recorded. We will be sharing a recording and the slides with everybody after this session. And we'll also be allowing for questions and answers toward the end of our discussion. A reminder, we're very excited to be back in person in 2022 on May 2nd through the 4th. And this time in San Juan, Puerto Rico for Inclusive's annual conference. We hope to see you all there. Now let's get into the very important content. Welcome to you all. Thank you for being here. Welcome to our panelists. Welcome to our members, the members of our network, our partners, and of course, as well, the Inclusive staff that are both participating and watching from the audience. So thanks for being here. Brief advocacy update again, as promised, for ESIP applicants. This was as a result of heavy advocacy on the part of Inclusive, on the part of other partner industry organizations, as well as members. As a result of our engagement with the NCUA, the board members have come around and have approved 30-year terms for ESIP applicant credit unions. So this is very important. This will allow credit unions to even further leverage these funds to serve their communities. But the big news here is that credit unions do not need to amend their applications with Treasury in order to take on the 30-year term. Treasury will be underwriting as part of their process, both 15 and 30-year terms. So at closing, credit unions will have the option for either term. So very good news for those of you who applied for ESIP. Now, I know we have a lot of content to get through, so moving quickly, let me ask Terry to say a few words setting the table for us for our discussion. We're talking about CDFI resources in the coming year, and of course, focused on the minority lending program. Terry.
Thank you, Jules, and good afternoon, everyone, or good morning to our friends out west. Just want to first place the minority lending program in a little bit of context for those of us who can remember back in the days before March of 2020. In the first 25 years of the existence of the CDFI fund, the first quarter century, Congress basically authorized about $4.5 billion in capital for CDFIs, capital grants that we know of as financial assistance, technical assistance, all of those kinds of things. About 4 billion of that went through the CDFI fund directly in the form of those capital grants. Another almost 600 million was a one-off special program called the Community Development Capital Initiative under the TARP Authority that came as a result of the Great Recession. Since COVID, just as a comparison, in just the past year, and Jules, you can click the rest. In December 2020, Congress approved $12 billion, almost 3 times as much as had been directed towards CDFIs in the previous quarter century. For CDFIs and what Congress called minority lending institutions, what we refer to as minority depository institutions in credit union land. Of that 12 billion, 3 billion went directly to the CDFI fund for capital grants, and 9 billion went to Treasury for the ESIP program that Jules was just talking about. And Jules, we can move ahead. So again, just to provide some context for where all these different pieces fit in, there are certain, to take advantage of these resources, there are certain things that require that you be CDFI certified. And that includes the annual financial assistance grants, and then some specialized grants that were announced this year. There are some things that you can apply to without necessarily being CDFI certified, such as the annual technical assistance grants. And the ECIP program was for CDFIs or minority lending institutions. You can go ahead, Jules. At the ESIP secondary capital program is now closed. Credit unions applied for approximately 3 billion out of the 9 billion. That was reserved for depositories, so CDFIs or MDI banks and credit unions only. So loan funds were not able to apply for that. Of the annual programs, financial assistance grants and technical assistance grants, Jules, you can, yep. As I said, these come out on an annual schedule every year. Since 1996, credit unions have received about $400 million in these annual grants. The 2021 awards have not yet been announced. We're expecting them to be announced any day now. On the technical assistance side, and yes, again, that does require certification. Technical assistance grants were announced this year. Oops, sorry. $12 million was awarded approximately to 94 credit unions. It was an all-time high in terms of the number of participating credit unions. And again, you don't necessarily need to be a CDFI to apply for these annual technical assistance grants. If you are eligible to be a CDFI, you can still apply. Those applications will be coming in the first quarter again next year. That's when we're expecting them to be released. All right, we can move ahead to these specialized programs that were these 2 programs, the Rapid Response Program and the Minority Lending Program. These 2 made up that special $3 billion allocation from Congress. The first part of that was the Rapid Response Program. $1.25 billion was awarded already in June, in mid-June of this year. $400 million was awarded to 244 credit unions. So in one application, one round, credit unions received almost as much as they had in the previous 25 years from the CDFI fund. Virtually every credit union, I think there might have been 1 or 2 exceptions for technical reasons, but basically every credit union that applied for a rapid response grant received a grant. Which brings us to the star of our show for today, the Minority Lending Program. That is the remaining $1.75 billion in grants. We don't yet know an awful lot about this program because it is still under development from the CDFI fund. We understand that there is supposed to be consultation with the field before the final program is released, the application is finally released. There is no firm timeline. Right now, our best guess, and again, this is just a guess, would be that sometime in the middle of 2022. The CDFI fund has said that certification will be required. So our question for any credit unions that are out there that are MDI credit unions, if you're listening, our question is your credit union CDFI certified? Right, every year we do an analysis of the entire industry, and we estimate there, out of all the credit unions that appear to be eligible for CDFI certification, those that are not MDIs, about 2/3 are already CDFI certified. Of those that are not of those that are MDI credit unions, less than 20% are CDFI certified. In other words, the vast majority of credit unions that are eligible for certification, and Jules, you can click one more time, out of the 500 credit unions that we believe are eligible for CDFI certification, 70% of them are MDIs. So if you are an MDI credit union and are not yet certified, please let us know. We can help. And if you know of MDI credit unions in the field that are not CDFI certified, we would appreciate you helping, reaching out to them, encouraging them to get in touch with us. This minority lending program is designed for them. There is no other source of capital, growth capital, long-term growth capital that compares with what's available from the CDFI fund. So with that, I will turn it over to Monica and the real stars of our show.
Thank you, Terry. Monica, if I may just cut in briefly, Terry raises a great point. Inclusiv does provide free CDFI eligibility assessments for our members. It's a little bit of a process. I'm going to share my contact information at the end of this deck. Feel free to reach out to me if you want to see if you're eligible for certification. And of course, we also can connect you with deeply discounted services for completing the certification application. And as Terry says, without further ado, I would like to turn the floor over to Monica and our great panel of credit union leaders.
So thanks, Jules and Terry. I'm really excited about today's panel. We have three female CEOs, powerhouse women who are operating credit unions in 3 different locations across the country. As Jules mentioned at the top of the call, we're joined by Sue Cuevas, CEO of Nueva Esperanza Community Credit Union, Carla Decker, CEO of DC Federal Credit Union, and Sheilah Montgomery, CEO of Florida A&M University Federal Credit Union. And I'm Monica Copeland. I'm a senior program officer, and I work with MDIs here in our Inclusiv network. So I'm excited about this panel because what we know from our members is that they often want to know very practical information. They want to know how credit unions become CDFI certified. They often come to us for technical information, whether it's templates or tools or just kind of access to consultants. But because you guys have gone through it and been there and done that, we'd love to hear from your perspective as MDIs who have become CDFI certified, but then have also accessed the federal funding and what that has meant to your credit union. So that's the story we're trying to share today. Just your experience, how it's been going, ups and downs, all of that's welcome. What I'm going to start off by is asking one by one for you to tell us a little bit about your credit union, just to give people a sense of who you are and where you're coming from. So I'll start with Sue. Sue, can you tell us a little bit about your credit union and also which CDFI grants you applied for and received, just to kick it off?
Okay, well, good morning, good afternoon, everybody, and thank you. Again, I'm Sue Cuevas with Nueva Esperanza Community Credit Union located in Toledo, Ohio. We are the only Latino credit union registered in the state of Ohio with about 3 million in assets. We serve in a low-income designated area as an MDI and CDFI certified. And this year we were excited to receive the RRP grant. And we also did receive last year the TA award. So we have received some recent grants, but it wasn't always that easy, and we'll share that a little bit more later.
Okay, thank you, Sue. And Carla, turning to you, could you tell the audience, we have over 100 people on the call today. It's a great group. Tell us a little bit about your credit union and also which grants you applied for and received.
Thanks, Monica. So yes, hello, everyone. My credit union is DC Federal Credit Union located in Washington, DC. We are currently $83 million in assets, but when we became a CDFI, it was in 2009. And it was at a moment in time, kind of like this, where, we were coming out of the financial recession, and the CDCI program that Terry mentioned was made available for secondary capital. And we certainly had gone through that, economic recession and had a number of really, really tough years. So in order for us to pivot and pursue a growth strategy, we just needed that additional infusion of capital. So we first acquired that secondary capital. It was as part of becoming a CDCI and frankly being accompanied in that process by Inclusiv, that our board embraced a mission of financial inclusion. Where we live in Washington, DC is a city that has a really high rate of gentrification. And the wealth gap is very much felt, so much so that in DC, the highest poverty levels are in those zip codes where the majority of the residents are people of color. So we serve primarily Black and brown people, and really think about who is most vulnerable in our community as a means of, again, executing on this mission of financial inclusion. So we serve everybody from youth who are at risk and perhaps are just finding their first job to Latinos and immigrants, and on the other end of the spectrum to retirees or people who have been in the district for a number of generations and are at risk really of either losing their homes or not being able to afford living in the city that they've called home. In the meantime, since 2009 and that original CDCI grant, we have won at least 4 financial assistance grants for over $4 million. And then we were also a recipient of the RRP earlier this year.
Okay, thank you, Carla. Sheilah, could you tell us about your credit union and also which CDFI grants you've applied for?
Well, good afternoon, everyone, and such a pleasure to be chosen to talk about something I love so dearly, and that is about MDIs and what we do to try to help communities. Well, as you stated, I am the president CEO of Florida A&M University Federal Credit Union. We are the second largest HBCU credit union in the nation. And I've told my colleague, who's the first largest, that we're coming after them. We're also the 4th oldest credit union in the nation. Our charter number has 3 digits. So we're very proud to brag about the fact that we've been around for a very, very long time. Our field of membership originally started off with the university, the staff, and we've since expanded that to the students. We've expanded that to some of the churches in the area, as well as civic and social organizations. We've had the opportunity to also work with the state of Florida, the Department of Economic Opportunities, to expand our lending services throughout the state of Florida. And through that partnership, that has allowed us to expand our field of membership to those who would not even know that a credit union was available to them. And as far as grants, we were very fortunate to be able to get the RRP grant. I don't know about my other colleagues, but we celebrated with clapping and yelling and screaming because we saw opportunities for our community. And I'll talk a little bit more about some other grants we received because of our collaboration with the city and the county. But for now, we are just ecstatic about being a part of this panel, hearing some of the things that will be said, and certainly, hopefully we can share some of the experiences that we've had by getting this grant.
Great, thank you so much. I just want to say to the listeners, you are welcome to type in questions for any of the speakers at any time. We're going to just jump into our discussion with facilitated questions, but if you're hearing something and it sparks a question, feel free to type it in. We'll take them at the end. So Sue, tell us, you're going to get us started from the top. For somebody who, let's walk through a little bit about what it was before you even applied. Like you heard about it, maybe you were on a webinar or maybe a board member told you, I don't know how you heard about it, but what was it like in terms of your credit union, your experience prior to applying? Did you have any concerns? Did your board have any concerns, reservations, and how were they addressed?
Okay, well, our credit union was chartered in 2010, and it was just myself. We had heard about grants. I came from a different side of the world. It's called the bank. And so I wasn't familiar with grant writing, definitely. The board decided that they would get an experienced grant writer to help us. And I was, okay with that. Again, I was very clueless to that. But to be perfectly honest with you, the first grant that we submitted, actually the first 2 grants that were submitted by a professional backfired on us. Some of the errors that were committed, obviously due to typo errors that she entered, like for example, saying we were 2 billion in assets and actually putting in a wrong D&B number. So obviously that just eliminated those applications, even though I actually did call and say, wait a minute, we're not 2 billion, we don't even have but 1 million. But that didn't work. So, I knew that once you had an error in this application, there wasn't any way that you could go back and fix it. So that was very disappointing. On the 3rd round, I decided I would give it a try. I figured I had a lot of mentors. I reached out to a lot of CDFIs, especially the Inclusiv board. They continuously motivated me. They cheered me on. They helped me. I started researching a little bit about how it was to get our story to be able to access some funding, because basically that's what it's about. It's what you're going to do with the funding to make an impact in your community. So I started working a little bit on that, and they say 3 times a charm. So the 3rd time, we went ahead and submitted it. And of course I was timid, I was like, oh, we're just going to go for 56,000. And actually that's what we got, was 56. And then I'm like, man, I should have asked for a little more. But, I was a little nervous. I'm going to be really honest with you. I didn't know. It's the fear of the unknown. However, as I started getting acquainted with the team from Inclusiv and reaching out to them, and even the CDFI fund, the team, I started feeling a little bit more relaxed about it. And, you know, again, the need, the desire, the passion to get funding, which was very much needed for our credit union, as we were a startup credit union with only 5 members. You know, I think we were more in a desperate mode, or I was more in a desperate mode. I was going to find any way I could do it to reach out and get some funding. So that's how we became to get our first TA grant. And then, you know, I thought, oh, okay, well, if that worked for that one, you know, let's see if I can do it again. But, you know, if some of you remember, the application process has changed completely from the very beginning, from 2010 till now. So it has been easier. And definitely don't let the size of your credit union. I'm a 1.5 woman. I have a teller. Obviously, we're just shy of 3 million with 900 members, but small CEOs, small credit unions and CEOs have to do a lot more work. You know, we can't delegate it to departments. So don't let that intimidate you in time-wise, because you need to be passionately aggressive to be able to seek these grants. There is money available for credit unions, and you have a real big support team. And I think I felt pretty confident after that. And then, you know, it became a little bit easier. Then the next one was, okay, let's go for the 125, and we received that. Oh, okay, let's now go for the RRP. Oh, okay, now let's do, you know, so it became a little easier. And so I'm glad that I pursued it, even though it was very negative in the beginning. And even though we used per se a professional that we thought was going to be helpful, I always say it's the passion that drives you to do what you need to do. That's the way I feel about it.
Sue, now that's a really powerful story, especially since it was like you tried and persevered and kept trying. It didn't work out, but you're like, I'm not going to give up, and then I'm going to do it myself, and rolled up your sleeves and did it.
And the funny thing, I want to share, the funny thing was that, you know, maybe because my upbringing, you know, I'm Latina, but, you know, like, I didn't want to spend any money to pay anybody to do this. You know, that was just my thing. I'm like, I'm not paying you 10 grand to do this when I think I can do this. So, you know, it was a persistent, you know, anybody probably could have said, hey, you know what, it's 2 times. I mean, you've got a professional writing it, you can't get it, but, you know, never give up on something that you really, really want. Never give up, especially in the credit union world.
Thank you. That's great advice. Like, I agree completely in terms of trying not to spend the money if you don't have to. If you feel like you need help, that's another thing. But if you feel like, hey, let me read the application, let me see what templates and tools are available. Carla, how was it in the early days for you in terms of before you applied or during your application period? Like, what was your experience like, and has it changed over the years? You've done it many times since then.
So Monica, there are some parallels in my story with Sue's. So first and foremost, you know, I mentioned that our very first application was for the CDCI, and it was one that was, I mean, it was inclusive, shepherding a number of credit unions through that entire process. So we were in really good company, and immediately we were part of this community of other CDFIs who were pursuing the same path. And I think the lesson learned there is to remember that you're not alone, and remember that there are not only other CDFIs available for you, you know, Inclusiv, board of directors, but that these folks really do want to spread the wealth, because, as Terry pointed out, the amount of money, or the concentration of dollars that was going to credit unions has been less than to other CDFIs. The other bit is that in the whole application process, there's an opportunity for you to tell your story, to really embrace who you are, to leverage the fact that coming from a small credit union, you really know your co-op in a way that perhaps others don't. And lastly, I guess a reflection on that this is a competitive process. And I'm going to say that, yeah, we have a leg up because we can tell our story with the passion and, not only the qualitative side of the world, but the quantitative, because we wear so many hats and because we have our, our paws and so many things. So again, just words of encouragement there. In terms of the actual journey for us, we have all along used a technical writer or a consultant for our applications. And the reason is because we have been on this growth path and we don't have the luxury of the resources in terms of just human capacity or even human talent. That is not to say that you can just divorce yourself from that whole process. In fact, the more involved you are with that application process and making sure that you are driving the story, that you are driving the substance, the request, we found that that's when we have been more successful than not.
So there have been times when you got the grant and times when you did not receive the grants? I mean, do you apply every year?
We do not apply every year, but yes, before, so our first grant, our first financial assistance grant was, I want to say 2016. And prior to that, we had applied 3 times and not received a grant. We never applied for the TA, which, in retrospect might have been a small faux pas on our part. We went directly to the financial assistance grant.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. Again, your persistence, you did it 3 times, you kept trying. And also just mentioning the consultants for a very technical application. Like we know, and you might have heard on some of the past webinars about CDFI, yes, the TA application and the technical staff application is easier and doesn't require as much on the financial projection side and things like that. So there are components that you might want to have a consultant there for. So that makes complete sense. Sheilah, can you tell us your story about the beginning, the early days of applying, or even the decision to become CDFI certified and also, apply for grants?
So the reason that I became a CDFI certified guru is because of Terry Ratigan. It was all his fault. Way back when credit unions were just getting into the CDFI arena, Terry approached our credit union, and this is not Florida A&M. I've been in 4 credit unions, so let me get that out there and get it out of the way. So when he approached me about it, what's the CDFI? And had no clue, even asked my state regulators, hey, I want to apply for a CDFI certification. Do you have a problem with it? And they said, why do you need to be a CDFI certified credit union? So that was my beginning journey. I had no clue why. But I did get a little grant for like $30,000 to start our first time home buying program. And 20 years ago, that was a lot of money. Fast forward, coming to Family Federal Credit Union, internet has helped to make this process so much easier because of data, trying to find the data. You have your demographics for your own credit union, which is a really good base point. But the people that you want to serve, you really need to understand what's out there and not what's inside your credit union. So we really did a lot of, we had a great strategic plan with our board to make a decision on, okay, what do we want to do? Are we helping those that are already in our field of membership? Are we going to reach out to those that don't have access but need that access? And once we as a unit decided we're going to go a little further than our field than what we currently have, we had to partner and collaborate with some of our leaders in the city. And that really helped us to broaden our opportunities to introduce people, first of all, to the credit union, to also give them a place that they could trust, to give them a platform to speak their truth of where they were. And we decided that the RRP grant was the best avenue for us to be able to reach those constituents. And so that was the first grant we applied for. Now, I will be the first one to admit, since I'm writing these grants, and I hate writing grants, but as my two colleagues said, you know your business better than anyone else. You know how to tell your story better than anyone else. And it doesn't have to be fancy words. And so late at night, I think I even called Terry one night at 10:30. Late at night, we, just told our story, and we did get the grant, the $1.8 million. I do believe grant writing is much easier now. I remember the old days when they wanted all this demographic and geographic information. The headache was, where do I get it from? That is no longer as troublesome as it used to be. But there's still the anxiety of, can I perform when I get this money? So strategically, we have to talk about it every month. How are we doing? Are we going to be able to get this money on the street? Are people coming to us? So that's always the anxiety, because getting funds, it's great. And like I said, we celebrate it, but now the anxiety is getting that money out, because we know that people are in desperate need of funding, resources, capital, you name it, they are in need. And we want to be the intermediary to help to facilitate those financial resources.
I think that's a great segue, Sheilah. Not to like unmute, because as a follow-up, I think that's a great segue to the last part, which is you have now received $1.8 million, or at least you've been awarded it by the CDFI fund, and you have these monthly meetings, and you have that anxiety. Talk about that experience as an awardee. What are your plans? How are you guys thinking through it? Like, kind of technically, like from a credit union who's worried about that, like what kind of bite-sized things are you doing to kind of ensure that you can get this money out on the street?
So again, when we had our strategic planning session, it was like, what new book of business will not only help those who don't know they need the help, sometimes they don't even know, but help those that need it, and also help grow the credit union? Because guess what? We are a small business. And so we have to figure out, just like all small businesses, how do we scale up? And so we decided that there were, or still is, so many small businesses that are not being served. We have 3 programs right now for small businesses. One up to 250,000, one up to 50,000, and one up to 5,000. Because we realize you can't make one program to fit the needs of small businesses. We also realize that businesses don't, at least minority and women-owned businesses, don't necessarily have capital. They don't have collateral. They don't have bookkeeping. And so we had to really restructure. This is why we have the monthly meetings, to once we get the information from, and we do a lot of community meetings as well. Once we get this information, we have to go back and look at our policy and pretty much say, does this meet to the need of those who needs this money? We've probably changed our policy about 3 or 4 times, trying to meet the needs of our people in a safe and sound manner. We do not want NCUA knocking on our door. So this is our avenue right now. We are going to, with our RP, we're going to branch out into first-time home buyers. Where again, this is a collaboration with a community group in Tallahassee. The city actually, no, the county actually gave us $1 million, a grant, to be able just to do the microloans, which is up to the 50,000. We are looking to get another $2 million from the city and the county as a sub-grantee for the RP. And so they realize that a financial institution that's trusted in the community can deploy the funds that are needed to those who, like I said, didn't even have banking relationships. And so that's kind of how we're taking one bite at a time, but we have focused in the business arena. And I'll end with, we did over $10 million in PPP loans. And we, again, was going to do about 4 million. The need propped up and we had to raise the amount to be sure that those who needed those funds, and we started as low as $1,000 for PPP, so that people can have access to what we call free money.
Thank you so much. Sue, I'm going to turn it to you. Can you tell us what it's been like now that you are a grantee? What has your experience been like? And particularly if you have any advice for those that are grantees or, soon to be grantees, like things that they should think about or plan or fold into their work once they've received the federal funding.
Okay, well, one of the things that as a grantee, we were obviously really excited because we had so many plans. We're not actually yet a full service credit union. And that's something that we have been working on. But with everything, to grow, you need funding. And so we're excited about that. We've got plans, to become a full service credit union in the upcoming year as we're going through a conversion. But, it's kind of like a status quo, I guess. We're proud, we're excited. We feel that they saw something in a small credit union that made it worth deserving of the funding based on the need that we had. Obviously when you submit a grant application, it is tedious, it is time consuming, and I'm not going to say that it's a fun thing, but it is a rewarding thing. And the best thing is when you get that email saying that you have been awarded this funding to pursue what you feel is needed in your community. So, I think not only have we regained or gained, I should say, the respect in the community because they know that we are pursuing to be able to help, especially the Latino community, as most of my credit union members, I think about at least 75% of our membership are Latinos, a lot of them underserved, unbanked, predominantly Spanish speaking. So this funding came in a very needed time, following the pandemic. It was kind of a breath of fresh air, going through everything that we had gone through. We didn't know in the back of my mind, will we be able to keep the doors open? Will we be able to serve our community? Will we be able to serve our members? What's going to happen? We're small credit unions. And when this came through, it was like a blessing, to be honest with you, because we now are able to solidify a lot of the opportunities that we couldn't before. So it is exciting, it is rewarding, it is something that I think every credit union not only try to become a CDFI, but reach out to those grants, whether it's the FA grant or the TA grant, or there are some small NCOA grants and small, inclusive grants or community grants. I mean, reach out, get your name out there, get your credit union out there. There's a lot of resources for help, especially the team at Inclusiv and other mentors. So it's been a joyful moment for us to have received them.
Thank you, Sue. And Carla? How's it been now that you are, well, actually, again, you've been a very long time a grantee, but what has been your experience on if you want to share anything on like either the reporting side or just tracking or impact, like, now that you've been able to, what have the grants allowed you to do?
Yeah, so I mentioned that for 3 times prior to the first award, we were not successful. And I think that one of those elements of success that we realized was key was to ensure that what we were proposing to do with the funds was presented as a business plan and not some, idea or aspiration of what we wanted to do with the money, but the plan had to be one that was very much steeped in who we were, our own capacity and history, our membership demographic and needs, and equally important, sort of the partnerships that we had within the community. From the perspective of reaching the folks that we were trying to serve with those products. Being a repeat awardee does mean that we have a track record of being a good, solid performer, and that we are attaining those metrics that we set for ourselves in that application, and that becomes really important. So building your application as part of your broader strategic process and plan, making sure that you are continuously monitoring how you are performing vis-a-vis that has been really important for us. And on the other side, as you were talking about impact, it also then allows us to really look back and tell our impact story also in a way that is very different from what we might have used to. So that if we in the past would have talked about, just the size of our loan portfolio, that is not necessarily how we speak or refer to our programs anymore. We now talk about who we serve and why we serve people in the way that we do, and how have our loans actually changed or improved people's lives. And we can, again, tell our story in a way that is even more robust. And we can tell it not only from the credit union persona, but we can tell it from the partnership and really the collective of how we're all sort of focusing on a specific goal and how we're carrying that forward.
Thank you so much, Carla. I'm going to turn it over to Jules. If you want to help us bring it home, Jules, in terms of Q&A and also any last remarks. But thank you so much to the panelists. Loved hearing your stories. Hope people will have a few questions for you.
Thank you so much, Monica. Thank you to Sue, Carla, and Sheilah. Hopefully you all can now see my screen. Though really not much to share on the screen. This was great, and it seems like the theme is perseverance, is continuing to go back, refine, and just apply, and it worked out, thankfully. So we do have at least one question, but I do want to open the lines up to folks. If you have questions, feel free to use the chat or the Q&A tool, and we'll read them out over the line and get your questions answered. The first is actually directed to Monica. And Monica, if you'd like me to elaborate, I'd be happy to. But for MDIs that applied in October for the streamlined CDFI certification application, do you have any information on timing for this program, approvals, submissions? Question.
If, Carl, you're talking about the NCUA portion, they did close it. So my question really is did you mean NCUA streamlined application deadline, which closed October 15th? They were providing approvals and notices of either being approved or denied, kind of on a rolling as the applications were coming in. So some groups have already heard back. But if you mean like, did you submit a CDFI application in October? Jules, I'll let you take that one if you have any thoughts on the response time on this.
Wonderful. Well, thank you, Monica. Carl, it is a bit of a two-part process for the streamlined application. First, you apply to the NCUA to be approved to go through the streamlined process. Once you get approved by the NCUA, and as Monica said, they've been approving them on a rolling basis. So if you haven't heard from them, you should soon, within the next week or two. Once you get approved, then you need to go and apply directly to the CDFI fund through the streamlined process, through the AMIS program. So it is a two-step. You, I think, need to complete that application by the end of this year. And once you do complete it, it's generally about 60 days before the CDFI fund comes back. And again, this is for the streamlined application. So it'll take about 60 days to hear back from the CDFI fund. For those of you that are applying as part of the standard application to the CDFI fund, they are supremely backlogged to, I think, about May or even April of this year. However, those applications that are submitted by November 30th should get reviewed and approved in time by early 2022 to apply for the financial assistance award. So that's something to keep in mind. But Carl, it should be about 60 days if you have in fact completed that application through AMIS for the certification. And then we have another question from the audience. Zara Collins asks, what are some of your organizational thoughts regarding preparation for grant writing? How do you handle the overlaps of applications? So this is a great question, and it's a pretty compound question in the sense that there are a bunch of different applications going on. You know, you have different CDFI programs, you might have an NCUA program, you might have, I don't know, the Resilience Fund with Inclusiv that you're applying for. And how do you handle those overlaps? But also, what are your organizational preparations in getting ready to apply for that grant? So I don't know, I see Carla nodding her head. Maybe I'll ask you to take a first stab at answering that.
Sure. So there are standard sections to the application, you know, the portion where you're speaking about your own organization and its capacities. There's the financial piece. I think the financial piece and aligning the financial piece may be for us the most challenging. So you have different applications and now you're compounding, like, you know, dollars from this amount and then dollars from this other program. And that's, I want to say that's where really the additional technical assistance, at least for us, has really helped us, and making sure that we're not looking at one application in a vacuum from the other. So let's just say that the background information, the corporate information is pretty standard. We make sure that we, you know, update with each application anything that might be new or happening new in our credit union. But to the extent that we can, we try to bring the applications to the strategic level to understand just how much are we really able to deploy. And through each program, as we present either a new loan product or a new partner, that we're also keeping in mind just how are we handling all of these, you know, all of these relationships and dollars in a way that is holistic. It is a challenge, and I think that's where we have benefited from just having a third party who can very objectively look at this and make sure that all of the numbers are aligning properly.
Thanks, Carla. Sue or Sheilah, do you have anything to add?
Well, I agree with Carla that there's a standard procedures that you have to go through. I think you thoroughly need to, first of all, like the organizational part of it is, okay, why is it that we want this? You know, what are we going to do with this? And if we say that we want to do this, we need to have some sort of support to say, okay, this is what it's going to cost. You know, I need this much for this. I need this much for that. You're kind of like letting them know in pieces why you need, let's say the software upgrades, or why you need some additional board training, or why this is imperative to the community in lending programs. And so you will have to, do a little bit of research within your own credit union to find out, what it is that I need this for, because that's really what they're wanting to know. Why do you need it? Why do you want this money? So it does take a little bit of time. As far as different types of grants, it's just structuring, alphabetically, strategically putting it, okay, I remember I did this one, and this is a deadline for this one. And, you track it in a way, whether it's through Excel, through Outlook, however it is, to remind yourself of what you've already submitted, and how you submitted it, and when is the deadline, and when are the reports due. So maybe moving forward as we start growing some, we may have to reach out to someone that can handle that piece of the puzzle, just so that we make sure that we complete it in a timely manner.
And I think you hit it on the head. As we grow, because I am now seeking someone to help to manage and monitor all these grants. I've got 3 and 1 coming in, and they all are different in their own rights. They all serve different communities in a different way. And so we're managing our balance sheet, making sure our general ledgers are set up properly to be able to extract information easy. That's in itself is something that you have to stop and think about. We're also looking at ROI. Are we bringing in these grants just to bring in grants, or is it to scale our credit union? And finally, when it comes to the constituents, are we providing what they want, not what we think they want? So it is critical thinking throughout the process, because it involves your balance sheet and of course, compliance and regulatory things that you have to look at too. So there are several areas that you think about as you are thinking about applying for grants. All of those things are inclusive. They're not independent, and they're not exclusive. They're all inclusive when you're talking about managing grants. So we've literally had to create our own spreadsheet, and this is why I'm going to hire somebody, let them do it, to find out the uniqueness of each one of those grants and make sure that we are in compliance on how we administer what we have proposed in those grants.
Very helpful. Thank you for that comprehensive answer. Now I see a hand raised from Valerie in the audience. Valerie, are you able to unmute yourself and ask your question? Valerie, you can also put your question in the chat tool. There you are.
It was by mistake that I raised my hand.
Well, now you have to ask the question.
I do. My question though, now that I'm on the spot here, is that we are actually, we're not a credit union yet, but we're becoming a credit union. And I guess one of my questions has to do with how do we kind of manage, getting our certification for the credit union, and then also becoming certified as a CDFI. And it just seems like there's all these different, there's the MDI, there's a credit union, there's being MDI, and then it's being a CDFI. And it's kind of mind boggling in terms of, are these things consecutive, or can we do them simultaneously? So I don't know if the current panelists can answer that yet for me, because we're in a different position than they are in, but maybe someone can give us some advice on how we we go about that, because we want to be able to be CDFI certified, but can we do it along with becoming, getting our certification as a credit union?
I'm going to take a stab at answering that. That's a great set of questions, Valerie, and I think it may be fought for a webinar all its own. But I will say that my understanding is that minority designation and low income designation can both be taken on out of the gate as part of the chartering process for establishing a new institution. For CDFI certification, my understanding is that you have to have at least a couple years of lending under your belt, because CDFI designation is based on your lending into these underserved communities.
Okay.
Well,
So we have to wait. We have to wait.
For CDFI, yes, but the minority designation and low income designation, that can be done in tandem with the charter process.
Thank you.
Basically, if anyone on the line disagrees with me, I'd love for you to correct me.
I don't disagree. I just think when you're talking about starting a credit union and understanding your resources, create a list of all of your resources, because there are community, city, there's all kind of organizations that would certainly be happy to help you to bring the capital to where you need it to be. The beautiful thing about some of these grants, you don't have to have that certification, but I would definitely start you a good list, because that list is going to be good for a long time. It's not going to be good for today. It's going to be what will not only sustain you as you're getting into that space, but people love to help people and see them really succeed. So if you could do that and not stress over things that are not there, try that low-hanging fruit, and you'll find that there's some opportunities there for you.
Wonderful. And Hank, great point to make, that you can apply for your technical assistance award from the CDFI fund once you get your charter. As Terry mentioned earlier in this session, the technical assistance is not required. The technical assistance award does not require CDFI certification at the time that you apply for the grant, but you will need to get certified subsequently. So we do have and I just want to acknowledge we are over time, so thank you to our panelists for staying on a couple minutes. Again, this is being recorded. I see some folks had to drop off, but we will share the recording with everybody. I just wanted to get to this one additional question. That is from Marcia. Hello, our credit union is certified and has been for a number of years. I do not know a lot about this area, but would like to ask if we are supposed to renew that certification and how often. We applied for a grant several years ago, but were not successful. I believe we are in a better position now and would love to throw our hat in the ring. Well, I'm glad you said that. You do need to renew your certification. Technically speaking, the certification does not expire, but you are required to submit an annual certification report each year. For those institutions with fiscal year end dates of December, then you have to submit your report generally by the end of March the following year. So this is something that you need to do annually. If you don't submit it, the CDFI fund reaches out to you and indicates that that you missed the report, and that I believe, generally speaking, your certification is no longer valid. If that is the case, then you would need to reapply for certification, which is a little bit of a process. There's timeline as we discussed earlier, but it shouldn't be too big of a deal if you continue to maintain your eligibility, excuse me. I'm just going to advance to the communications. I do need to update my photo with some longer hair. But if you have additional questions, please do reach out to me. We'd be happy to assist you. I just want to say thank you to Sue, Carla, and Sheilah, as well as to Monica and Terry for their participation. And of course, thank you so much to the attendees on the line who came through to learn a little bit about the Minority Lending Program. We hope to see you all for future webinars. We hope to see you next month at the next town hall session, but also working with you all on your certifications, on your reporting, and sharing some advice and guidance around applying for grants.
Absolutely.
Thanks again. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.